Good morning. As I ring our bowl this morning, I hope you will allow the vibration to quiet your mind and open your heart. Good morning again, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalists of the Chester River. We come together here to explore our unique spiritual journeys and learn from each other. I hope that you will find words of wisdom and supportive friends today. Welcome, visitors, friends, and members here in the sanctuary and those who are on Zoom. Welcome to Michael Casey, and thank you for sharing your music with us every week. And thank you to Dr. Adris Harrell. She is bringing us her sermon this morning entitled, What Does It Really Mean to Be Normal? Dr. Harrell is a member and worship associate of the First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware. She is a school psychologist, correct? And much of her sermon today was inspired by her work as a school psychologist, working with students of different abilities and different disabilities. I do have a few announcements this morning. First of all, our next potluck is on Friday, May 15th, coming up, and it will be at Paula's house at 6 p.m. The grounds cleanup part 2 will be Saturday, that next Saturday, May 16th at 9 a.m. Please come and join in. And then also I want to mention that we have a sign-up sheet in the lobby for summer discussions. As we are, winding through May, our last formal service will come up at the end of May, and then we'll start our summer discussions. So if you have an idea of something that you want to talk about as a community that would help you feed your soul or sort something out, please bring that to the group. You can sign up in the lobby, and we would all appreciate it. All right, and now let us light the chalice. The words are in your order of service. We light this chalice for truth. May the search for truth be within us always. We light this chalice for love. May the love for others be strong in our hearts. And now, if you will stand as you are willing and able to sing number 188 in the gray hymnal, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. Oh, we did that one well. I bet we could even do that in a round. Don't you think? Do you want to try? Okay. No, we did well. We'll stick with did well this time, and next time we'll try it that way. All right. So I want to invite Dr. Harrell up. She's going to share some opening words with us this morning.
Good morning. I am honored to be back at Chester River on Mother's Day. For those of you who feel celebratory on this day, I hope your day is filled with joy and love. And for those of you who are feeling some pangs of pain today, I hope you are able to find comfort and love, and that there will be a day of joy in the very near future for you. The following was written by Jonathan Mooney in his book, Normal Sucks: How to Love, Learn, and Thrive Outside the Lines. Adolphe Quetelet was the most important European statistical thinker of his time. In 1835, he put forth the concept of the average man. For all Quetelet's talk of the importance of means and averages and his conflation of the two with normal, he never argued that the average man was a real person. He argued that the average man was only a useful statistical construct for understanding the world for people in government and other professionals. It wasn't something to actually be.
And now is the time for our offering this morning. And before I bring out our baskets, I want to appreciate all the gifts of our community. There's so many offerings here. Sharing of your time, your food, your flowers, and many, many expertise as we put our services together. As a community, we make this church whole, and I am grateful for that from each of you. Each of you is so appreciated and valued. Let us now also share a financial offering to support the good works of our community.
This is Mad World by Derek Lewis.
was lovely. And so now I would like to invite Dr. Harrell forward. She is going to share a reading with us this morning and her sermon.
Lulu Miller, in her book, Why Fish Don't Exist, offers the dandelion principle. To some people, a dandelion might look like a weed, but to others, that same plant can be so much more. To an herbalist, it's a medicine, a way of detoxifying the liver, clearing the skin, and strengthening the eyes. To a painter, it's a pigment. To a hippie, a crown. To a child, a wish. To a butterfly, it's sustenance. To a bee, a mating bed. To an ant, one point in a vast olfactory atlas. And so it must be with humans, with us. From the perspective of the stars or infinity, sure, one human life might not seem to matter. It might be a speck on a speck on a speck, soon gone. But that was just one of infinite perspectives. Okay, so how many of you have survived a statistic class at some point in your life? Okay, there's quite a few of you. For those lucky people, you may remember something that looks like this. It's a normal distribution, often referred to as the bell curve because it's shaped like a bell, or the two names are combined to call it the normal curve. In my work as a school psychologist, I work with the normal curve every day. For those of you who are lucky enough to not take a stats class or who forgot everything you learned, I'm going to give you a quick and dirty explanation of the normal curve. If you measure something in the general population, for example, height, most people will measure around the same amount, give or take, what most people think of as the average range. But then fewer people will measure less or more than those in the average range. So let's pretend this chart is showing the height of women. The bars show how many women measure at each height. And you can see how the bigger bars are grouped together, meaning more women were of those heights. And as you go away from the average heights, the bars get shorter. And then when we draw a line along the top of the bars, we form the normal curve. There is a lot of math stuff happening that is too complex for me to explain. But basically, 68% of the population will fall within the average range. That leaves about 32%, almost a third of the population, who are not in the average range. We use this normal curve to measure different things. In my field, we use it to measure students' cognitive abilities, academic skills, and life skills so that we can see if the students are performing within the average range compared to other children their age. If they're measuring well below that range, they are provided academic interventions or special education. There are a lot of problems with this system and with many of the tests measuring intelligence that are rooted in racism and privilege. The normal curve itself is not racist, but it has been used to justify many racist theories. Some characteristics that we measure cannot be changed, like our height when we have stopped growing or the color of our eyes. The measurement of other characteristics can be changed with education or practice, such as our reading skills or ball throwing skills. Depending on what we are measuring, being above average is not always a good thing. For example, there are some people who wish they were not always the tallest person in the room, or we could be measuring aggressiveness, and we would not want people to measure high in that. We all have things that we are good at and things we are not so good at. Yet many of us walk through life feeling like we don't have much to offer the world. And there are many who see other people as not having much to offer. And why is that? It often happens when there is a mismatch between the values of our culture and the abilities an individual possesses or was taught. Our culture tells us which skills or traits are important and which are not. The dominant white culture in the US sends a message that a person is worthy if they are handsome or beautiful by mostly white standards, are intelligent, independent, and ambitious. They are held to an even higher esteem if they are in a position of power, are well educated, and earn a high income. But some other cultures value people who are introspective, wise, and prioritize their community. And they are held to an even higher esteem if they have lived a long time, can share the history of their community, and provide sage advice. So what messages have you received about what skills are important? So as a Generation X female in a white upper middle class environment growing up in Connecticut, I learned that I needed to be good at academics. I did not need to be good at fixing things or be good at sports. I needed to be a pleasant woman who was agreeable and did not argue. I had needed to have a professional career and be a perfect mother. So depending on your gender, generation, your family's educational background, your ethnic background, where you lived, your messages may have been similar or very different. If there has been a close match between what our culture values and the characteristics and abilities you possess, then you have been lucky and privileged to be born with certain traits and raised in a family that was able to provide and develop those characteristics. If there's not a close match, then you may have felt out of step with everyone else, felt like you were not good enough, not successful, not worthy of being in a loving relationship, or felt stupid. Many of the messages we learned in school, our children in the US are given a narrow view of which skills are valuable. Think of all the different professions that exist that allow a person to be gainfully employed. There is a huge variety, and many of them rely on skills that are not taught or emphasized in our schools. Think of a naturalist, an artist, carpenter, farmer, public speaker, police officer, therapist, or actor. These all rely on skills that at the most were touched on in a typical school. But what are our children told? They must be good at reading, writing, and math. Our daughter Elise was lucky in that she was able to quickly learn academic skills, and school was a positive place to be. When she was in kindergarten, once a week, I would come into her class as a parent volunteer to help the students who were not as quick to pick up the advanced skill of writing a complete sentence. And their frustration was heartbreaking at times. One little girl could draw a picture of what she wanted to write, but she could not write the letters of any of the words that I would try to help her sound out. Then one day, this little girl had a birthday party at her pool club. That little girl swam like a fish. She was able to go underwater and swim from one side of the pool to the other without coming up for air. Elise, on the other hand, could not swim, and swimming lessons had been an utter failure up at that point. And at the party, she ended up getting in too deep and started to struggle in the water, and another parent had to pull her out of the pool. That day, my daughter's advanced academic skills did nothing to keep her alive. It became an important lesson to both girls that each had their own strengths that were important. But unfortunately for my daughter's classmate, this was not a lesson that was reinforced on a daily basis at school. Our classrooms in the US are designed to teach the children in the average range. They are generally not designed to instruct children who are very advanced in some skills. And although there are special education services, that is only for children who fit in a box that goes with a specific label or disability. If the child is struggling but does not have one of those disabilities, it is much harder to access academic support. And studies have shown that children who are young for their grade are more likely to be diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. And children who are older for their grade are more likely to be labeled as gifted. If a child does not fit the average range of their grade level, we start looking for a label because it no longer feels normal. What I think is important to remember, though, is that average is not the definition of normal. This is something that our society often forgets. Normal is the whole continuum. Average is just a segment of what is normal. Someone who is acting different than what we are used to is within the normal curve. Someone who has a different bone structure, whose body does not work the same with ours, is within the normal curve. If everyone who is normal was in the average range, then our curve would look like this. So it would not be a normal curve. To have a normal population, We need to have people on the tails of this graph. Those people are just as important to our society as the people all bunched up together in the average range. Almost everything we measure in nature is along some kind of continuum, like the normal curve. Humans, not Mother Nature, are the ones who have categorized things, saying that something is either a this or a that. Underwater, there is a range of animals that we call fish. Some who can breathe underwater and some who can breathe both under and above the water. Some with scales and some not. Some who live in salt water, freshwater, or both. Some with bones and some not. And yet all these animals would be considered a fish. Taxonomists, of course, have much more complicated and detailed ways of attempting to categorize every animal, but just look at the tomato, which is technically a fruit, to see how clear our categories of plant life are. Humans have also categorized gender and sexuality into two or just a few categories based only on a couple of external body parts. Science now shows that there are internal characteristics, such as different gene expressions or the ability to process specific hormones, that make a range or a normal curve more appropriate in how we think about a person's gender identity or sexuality. The right wing, with its anti-LGBTQ campaigns, is trying to force an entire country into the binary of gender expression, male or female, and one sliver of sexual identity, straight. They want to ignore the spectrum that has existed and expressed itself in different ways for centuries. But the normal curve is a demonstration that our LGBTQ+ siblings have always existed, because it is more normal for there to be a spectrum than a binary when it comes to nature. Diagnoses and disorders are included under the normal curve. They are part of the variety of our animal species. The term neurodiversity promotes that ADHD and autism are simply different places along the continuums of attention, sensory processing, communication, or social skills. Humans have created arbitrary lines to say when something's far enough away from average to be a disability, and we have moved the lines over time. We once thought of autism as someone who looked like Dustin Hoffman's character in the movie Rain Man. Do you all remember that movie? He could never miss specific TV shows. He screamed and hit himself when he had to go on a plane. He talked about the same thing over and over again. He struggled to communicate. He rocked back and forth, and he did not look people in the eye. Over the years, people with much less severe symptoms have been diagnosed with autism. With each edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM, the criteria for psychiatric disorders are changed. We are currently at the 5th edition text revision, or DSM-5 TR. For autism, for example, the symptoms in the DSM-3 in 1980 had to be markedly abnormal, gross deficits, or bizarre. Now in the DSM-5 TR, showing a deficit and repetitive behaviors are sufficient to receive the diagnosis. While a diagnosis of autism used to describe behaviors at the far end of the normal curve, it is now describing behaviors that are somewhat closer to the average range. We are moving the diagnosis farther up the normal curve because, in part, I think, without the diagnosis, people who are just outside the range of average are not provided the understanding and support they need to be included in our communities and schools. For example, in February 2020, there was a story about Anthony Ianni, a college basketball player with autism, and his teammate, Draymond Green, who went on to play in the NBA. Green was a jokester, and he liked to pick on Ianni, who had difficulty knowing how to react to Green's jokes. Despite Ianni getting very upset, Green did not let up until the coach told him that Ianni was autistic. The next day, Green asked Ianni why he hadn't told him he was autistic, because if Green had known, he never would have picked on Ianni. The two men eventually became friends, and this story was celebrated by social media. But why was it necessary to put a label on Ianni for Green to show him compassion? It was an example of expecting a person to act normal or within the average range, and only allowing for an exception if there was a diagnosis. If Ianni did not have the autism label, Green seemed to feel justified in continuing to pick on him. And unfortunately, many people with disabilities in the US are still expected to act or are treated like they are in the average range. Many students who struggle with things like ADHD, for example, are expected to take their medicine and stay in their seat at school. People with mobility challenges are assumed to be able to transport themselves around the community. Paratransit is therefore often underfunded, and people are forced to wait hours for a ride. Our government expects those with significant mental and physical health issues to be able to hold a 40-hour-a-week job and run a household, instead of the community providing appropriate housing and job support. Deaf people are expected to verbally talk, instead of the community providing different communication strategies in businesses and institutions. The prevalence of schizophrenia is fairly stable across cultures, but how it is regarded and treated is different. The World Health Organization found in the 1970s that developing countries, those in Latin America, Asia, and Africa, produce better outcomes for schizophrenic patients than those in developed countries such as the United States and Europe. Later studies in the 2000s continued to have the same results. In a 1980 psychological anthropology study by Janice Jenkins, family members of schizophrenic patients were interviewed in different countries. In individual focused cultures like the white culture here in the US, parents' critical comments about the patient tended to focus on the personality traits of the patient or their clinical symptoms. For example, that the patient was lazy or experienced hallucinations. In more familial focused cultures like in Mexico, family members' critical comments focused on the impact the behaviors had on the family, such as the patient not working and providing income or being disrespectful to their parents. Individually focused cultures regarded helping the patient, such as taking food to them, as being over-involved, while in familial focused cultures, this was thought to be the right thing to do. Different cultures place different labels and meanings on the symptoms of schizophrenic patients and how they should be treated. This impacts the stigma of their disease, and as a result, how much the patient is allowed to participate in the social life of their community. Oh, thank you. Sorry, it's a spring allergies. So it is not only the disease itself, but how the culture views the disease that affects the functioning of someone with schizophrenia. It's not just where you are on the spectrum that is important, but how the culture you live in regards your spot on the spectrum. In the last 20 years or so, the inclusion movement in the US has pushed public education to include more children with disabilities into the general education classes. As a result, many parents, students, and teachers have begun to learn the value of working with children who have skills in the lower end of the normal curve. We see lots of feel-good news stories now, what the disability community calls inspiration porn. But it's about usually a student with disabilities who helped a team, like handing them water bottles during games, and the student is rewarded the last game of the season by getting to play in the last few minutes of the game. And sometimes the child ends up making an amazing goal, and to me looks like they should have been playing the entire season. Or sometimes the child's team, or even the opposing team, helps the child make a goal or score. In these stories, the child's teammates and coaches talk about the positive things the child brought to the team, and how the child often was very loyal or encouraging to their teammates. While these stories often romanticize disabilities or highlight the compassion of others, it should not be lost that a team felt the need to celebrate someone who did not have the skills typically valued by sports teams. The skills that the child did have, such as being enthusiastic, encouraging, funny, optimistic, empathetic, or a hard worker, are what it takes to help a team play to their best abilities. They are the skills of relationships and building connections. We often romanticize people with disabilities as being able to teach us something about ourselves, like patience or courage. But they do not exist for our benefit. They exist for the same reason everyone else does, by chance or luck or whatever the nature of our conception, birth, and development of health. People at all levels of the spectrum of being are here on earth to exist, to grow, to love, and to form relationships with others. As a school psychologist, I currently work with children with many types of body or brain differences, such as autism, deafness, cognitive disabilities, cerebral palsy, brain injuries, genetic disorders, etc. Some children's health issues have created significant financial, physical, and emotional challenges for their parents and families. But they all fiercely love their children and will do anything to make their children happy and safe. They find value in their child's existence, not just because that's their child and they love them, but because the child gives love too. No matter the extent of the child's disabilities, when I ask the parents what the child's strengths are, many of them can give me a decent list. He's affectionate. She can point to what she wants. She loves to dance. They can turn and look when you call their name. He likes to sing. He loves to give tickles. They like to cuddle. She recognizes her family members, or they like to pet the family's cat. And don't these sound like great skills to have a happy, loving life? Elena Del Don is a retired professional basketball player from Delaware. Her older sister Lizzie has cerebral palsy, autism, and is deaf and blind. Del Don chose to not play basketball overseas during the WNBA off-season so she could spend time with her sister. Del Don said, "Lizzie doesn't know I play basketball. She doesn't know that I'm 6'5". She just knows that I am one of her people and a really important person in her life, and that's all I want to be." Lizzie does not love Elena because Elena's on the better end of the normal curve for athletics, and Elena loves Lizzie even though she's on the lower end of the curve for many skills. What drives that loyalty to each other? Why do school teams celebrate someone who does not have concrete skills that make them a better team? Why do parents fiercely fight for their children who need so much from them? Connection, relationship, love. Isn't that enough to determine the value of a person? Now, I'm sure many of us can think of how super smart people have made incredible inventions and how people who were daring made significant discoveries. We can envision how people who are above average in positive qualities provide positive contributions to our society. But how many of those contributions by those in the above average range contributed to climate change or waste or created institutions that entrenched racism into our systems? There are not always positive outcomes associated with positive traits. What we are learning through research, though, is that people who have strong relationships live longer and are healthier as they age. People on the tails of the spectrum may not have strong cognitive abilities, great language skills, or appropriate social skills, but they can do what everyone else can do: love. The love will be expressed and experienced in different ways. Elena Del Don's sister cannot verbally say "I love you" to her, but Lizzie reaches out to touch Elena's leg when she sits next to her. It's a form of connection. Whether we have a disorder, disability, or not, we are part of the normal curve. Whether we require medication or treatment to improve or make ourselves healthier, we are still under the normal curve. Although there is a statistical average range, it is our culture that determines what is the range of acceptability or desirability for each characteristic, trait, or behavior. Are you lucky enough to be a good match? Or are you too much or not enough, according to the community around you? But when it all comes down to is that none of it matters when it comes to love. We are all capable of love and of being loved. And that is what makes you normal. So please rise and bow your spirit to sing hymn 346. Come sing a song with me. look at my script. So I offer these words from Maya Angelou. If you're always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be.
And now, let us extinguish the flame with the words that are in your order of service. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.
This is one of the Jungle Babies by Eric Satie. No, the book, not the Jungle Babies, the Nyoncians by Eric Satie. Both his music and his, from everything I've read, his personal habits were anything but normal.
And now feel welcome to join us for coffee and conversation, and go into your week with love and compassion and peace.